Would like to thank everyone for being here this evening for our educational visioning session. This is meeting one of 4 meetings that are going to focus on educational visioning. We are super pleased to welcome the design team from SMMA here. We do think that a critical part of us being able to design a new high school or a renovated high school, whichever we decide, is really just having a talented design team. And we feel, we really felt like we really did well when SMMA emerged as kind of the architects that are going to be supporting this work. We're also supported this evening by members of Left Field, Lynn Stapleton and Shane Nolan, and I know the design team from SMMA are going to introduce themselves to kick off our meeting here. But I want to thank everyone for their time and for participating. The more voices that are present in the design of our building, I think the more pleased we are all going to be with the new facility that we are able to eventually move into. So thank you very much for being here this evening. If there's any questions that you might have after the event, please don't hesitate to reach out and send us an email or give a call. So with that, David, I'd like to turn it over to you, and you can kind of introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Good evening, everybody. My name is David Stephen. I'm with the SMMA design team and with New Vista Design. And I'm going to be facilitating this workshop as well as the following 3 workshops with the assistance of my colleagues from SMMA. And we're gonna, in just a few minutes, I'll give an overview of what this process is all about, and we'll do an introductory activity. But I just want to open up the floor for folks from SMMA and then from Left Field to just introduce themselves. And I'll let you start, perhaps Helen, because I can see you first on my screen up there, and then you can call on a colleague, and we'll make our way down the SMA chain.
Great, thank you, David. That's what you get for showing up first, perhaps. Hi, my name is Helen Fantini. I'm a project manager, your project manager for this project with SMMA. I will hand it off to Phil Poinelli.
Hi, Phil Poinelli here. I am an educational planner and architect with SMMA. I have been, along with colleagues, meeting with teachers and staff and administrators Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday today, and we'll be there tomorrow as well. So we will have had 4 full days of discussions with educators and staff, and we had a great team of 14 or 15 students that we met with today as well. So that was great fun.
And Phil, who are you handing off to?
Matt.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, my name is Matt Rice. I'm the project architect for the project. So I am involved early on here, working with Phil and with David and with Helen. But then I'm also going to be responsible for the drawings as they move into later stages of development. So provide some connectivity there to the entire process.
And do we have anyone else from SMMA?
I think that is us.
I think
so
that's it.
Hand it over to Shane.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Shane Nolan with Left Field Project Managers. We're the owner's project manager for the new high school. So we'll be working with the town, with the school and the designers to make sure we follow the MSBA process, bring this through the submissions to MSBA as we go through this feasibility and schematic design for a proposed new high school. And I think Lynn Stapleton.
Hi, I'm Lynn Stapleton and I work for Left Field as well, and I'll be helping Shane out.
All right, so that's our design team, and we're going to give all of you a chance to introduce yourselves in an introductory activity. Because we're doing this virtually, we need to make the meeting shorter, so we're not going to have time to do individual introductions, so we're going to get into some small breakout groups to do those introductions and do a little bit of reflecting on our greatest hopes for this process, or your greatest hopes for this process. I will say that since we've had to do all this virtually in the last year and a half, we've learned a lot. One of the things we will try to do is make this as interactive as possible. If it's possible for people to turn their screens on, I think that's always a nice thing so that it feels more personal. I know that for some people, you might have other things going on or your bandwidth might be a little bit limited. And certainly when I'm doing presentations, you don't need to leave your screen on. So which I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna talk a little bit about the process. All right. Now, can everybody see my screen? Can I have a thumbs up if we can? Okay, great. And I might ask, let's see, Helen, if you could kind of monitor the chat, if anyone has anything coming up, any questions, then is that, I just volunteered you, Helen. I hope that's okay.
Colin told me, no problem.
All right, very good. Very good. So, yes, so I've been doing this process with a lot of different schools going through the MSBA feasibility study process. I do have a background as an architect. I'm a licensed architect, but I did something weird as I left the field after 5 years and I got into education. And I was worked in K-12 for the next 20 years as a high school teacher and then an assistant principal and a curriculum developer. And then I got back into thinking about how do we combine kind of forward-thinking ideas about what schools can do academically and educationally with ideas about making sure that we design facilities that really support both what we do now and what we envision for the future. So that's a lot about what this process is about. It's really about envisioning a future building and program that goes on within it. Let's see, so for tonight, I'm going to be very conscious of making sure that we finish exactly on time by 9 o'clock, if not before. I'm going to give a quick overview of what the visioning process entails. We'll do that introductory activity around greatest hopes. And then we're going to get into talking through an interactive process where I'm going to be presenting, but you're going to be able to respond to the slides through a program called Mentimeter. And I'll explain to that when we get to it. You'll just like log on to a website that's going to allow you to respond to the slides. So you're going to see that in this workshop and in the ones that come next, we're trying to gather a lot of information about who you are, what you do, what you value. And we're also at the same time trying to share a lot of different ideas with you. To just kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, because this really is it's your building, it's your process. The priorities that we establish, educational and architectural, in this process are going to connect directly to your educational plan and to the design of your building. So there's really a very direct link between the priorities that we come up with here and what your building is going to end up looking like. And in the process, we're also going to be meeting with the community to get their input. As Phil said, he's been working on the ground with focus groups and including students to get more of the lay of the land and also kind of like more fine-grained kind of information about what you do and how you do it. This is kind of the 10,000-foot view. We're really establishing big picture priorities. We're going to take a break for 15 minutes after we do some of that priority goal setting. And then we're going to get into small groups. And that's another way that we really try and personalize this virtual experience. But we do this when we do in-person workshops as well. A lot of small group discussions so that everybody has a chance to get their voice heard. These groups will be facilitated by folks from the school, from the district. And but it's really about gathering your best thinking. We're going to start out with a conversation about what you think future-ready teaching and learning should look like. And we're going to create a learning goals poster for every Wakefield Memorial High School classroom. So we're going to spend about 40 minutes in that process. And the reason why we do that is because we want to really start this whole conversation with really taking a deep dive into your ideas about your academic vision. So as I said, we're going to be working with different stakeholder groups. We've already met with your leadership team. We're calling this group the Educational Working Group. And we've got lots of different stakeholders here that are part of this. but we are going to be doing a community forum, 2 community forums in which we'll be sharing with them also these big picture ideas and getting their input. We're going to start with a focus in this workshop and in the next workshop with educational vision. So we're going to be really thinking about sort of what you do, what you value, what you feel like your cutting edge is, how you feel like this is an opportunity for you to move your district agenda forward. And then we're going to connect it to ideas about design. And we'll start in the next workshop talking about what we call design patterns. And that simply means we're going to share lots of pictures with you about what school design could look like and see what you respond to. Helen, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, we're noticing I don't see the chat, and I do like to follow instructions, and
Oh, yes.
I can't monitor
don't
what I
see the
can't see.
chat.
So if you're able to enact that function,
Interesting.
I'm happy to monitor.
Let's see if I can find it. I'm gonna, and I can't even, okay, I'm gonna stop share. Oh, here it is. Okay. Huh, more. Okay, I do not see the chat either.
I don't see it, but there is a raised hand function.
There is a raised hand function. Actually, yeah, we did not set this Zoom call up. It was set up through where was the Shane, who set this up?
Through the town administrator's office.
So somehow there's not a chat function. So I guess people are just going to have to raise their hand and we're going to have to ask questions, but we'll try and make sure that from here on in we have a chat feature, because I think that's always very useful. Okay, thanks for pointing that out, Helen. Do people know how to raise a hand? Is that? Yeah. I'm actually trying, not even sure how to do that myself, but could someone explain how to raise a hand?
So, yeah, if you raise your hand,
There we go.
Knob on the bottom. If you hit raise your hand, it'll come up in the top.
Yep.
Left-hand corner.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom. Did you have a question or you were just demonstrating? Okay. All right. Thank you. So yes, so please do that and we'll be sure to stop and address any questions. We really want to make this conversational. Again, it's a lot about gathering information. All of the information that we gather is going to be consolidated as a set of notes with highlights that will be located in a Google Docs folder that will be accessible to all of you and will also be posted by the district. And so we're just really trying to make this process as transparent as possible. I think I was talking about design patterns and guiding principles, and that's going to be what we focus on in workshops 2 and 3. In workshop 4, we're going to actually do bubble diagramming, and we're going to work with our architects to take some of the priorities that we've been establishing architecturally and see what they look, and educationally, and see what it might look like in bubble diagram format. So actually start to diagram adjacencies of spaces, because the MSBA has a template of spaces and it's going to look at your enrollment for this school, and it's going to spit out a spreadsheet with exactly how many square feet that it will help you fund and exactly what that square feet should be, so what all the rooms and spaces that you need. And it's a very thoughtful template, but we can be very creative about how we use it, depending on the adjacencies that we create. So I'm going to try to illustrate that as I share with you some of these design patterns. And all of this translates into an ed plan that your district is going to be writing. And so the MSBA wants to see a real alignment between the language in the educational plan and the priorities that have been established during visioning. So as I said, we're gonna make these shorter workshops. We're going to use Google Docs as a way to collect information, and we're going to be using this program called Mentimeter to gather a lot of information. What's nice about Mentimeter is that we're going to be able to see on the screen what people are thinking about. Now, I do want to say that this is anonymous. Mentimeter is completely anonymous. We don't know who is sending in what priorities or messages. So But so, it just allows you to really share your best thinking. This all is part of developing a narrative, as I said, that connects to the ed plan. And we also want to really build on the current innovation agenda and programming in the district, and look at your school improvement plan and any other sources that the districts helps us to identify. Again, this is your language, it's your project. I did want to say too that in this MSBA feasibility study, we have to look at 3 different options. We have to look at a renovated school, we have to look at a renovated school with an addition, and we have to look at a completely new building. And so all of the priorities that we're establishing are going to then be the lenses through which we look at those different options. And along with cost is going to tell us, well, what's going to give you the best bang for your buck or the best school. For any of you who have done a home renovation and done a gut renovation, that's what I want you to imagine. So when we're talking about a renovated school, we're talking new windows, new systems, new walls. So you can rest assured that whether it's renovated or with an addition or new school, it's going to have this list of things. And I have 2 pages of things that I want to tell you will be in any MSBA project, because as we then go into thinking about your own priorities, I want you to be able to focus on other more aspirational things, because a lot of us that are living and working in buildings that are really challenging on the most basic levels get caught in the weeds there. So I just want to rest assured people that any renovated or new building will be fully ADA compliant. It will be definitely have safe entry and security features, both passive and active. We know that that's extremely important. It will be comfortable in terms of heating and cooling, and it will have a cooling system. We look at schools being used year round. And so we need to be able to facilitate that. This comes along with new technology and new furniture. So we can assume a robust technology infrastructure, ubiquitous technology throughout the school. All classrooms will be well sized. We know we have to have larger classrooms in general, because project-based learning or varied learning modalities require you to have more space than just sitting in rows facing forward. So we need classrooms that are going to be agile. They will all have natural light. We know that a lot of times we're functioning in interior rooms with no natural light, and that a lot of studies show that really affects both health and performance. Indoor-outdoor connectivity is going to be something we're going to be thinking about. How do we maximize the outdoor use, and in terms of outdoor learning spaces, informal, formal, and also maximizing sort of the other elements of your site. Special education, there's quite a bit of square footage that is connected to special education in the MSBA template, and it needs to be distributed throughout the school. So you may have an OT, PT sensory room that's in a more private place, but otherwise there's going to be a lot of breakout rooms that allow you to do push-in delivery with your special or differentiated instruction or enrichment in close proximity to your classrooms. Any building, new or renovated, will have safe drop-off and pickup features. We're going to be thinking about site circulation and also traffic patterns. It has to be sustainable in terms of passive and active features. The MSBA has a pretty high bar for this, and then some communities choose to take it further. So we're going to be talking to you about that. And there will be an adequate number of distributed bathrooms, and we know that some of them need to be gender neutral. So those are just some of the things that any of these buildings will contain. So, and I also just wanted to touch on some big picture themes about schools that we're designing these days. Actually, this picture on the right is from a new MSBA school. It just opened a few weeks ago in Framingham, the Fuller Middle School. And you can see that it doesn't look like business as usual. The MSBA is really open to developing buildings that they feel like are going to fully support what you envision academically, but also last for decades to come. So big picture themes that connect to that. We need buildings that are flexible and adaptable. We're going to assume that the building is fully wired and fully usable. Every square inch of the building is a potential area for teaching and learning. Small and large scale community where we know that social emotional learning is really important and kids feeling a part of a smaller learning community, but that we also want to have them feel part of the larger community. Extending learning beyond the classroom walls. The classroom is still the basic building block, but there's going to be lots of other spaces that you're going to have access to as teachers and students within a building. And the synergy between those spaces and the varied sizes and the connections are what give us a lot of that flexibility. And we're going to be focused on being as practical as possible. This is not about being trendy. Again, this is about your building. And you are working with a great and very thoughtful design team that's done a lot of this work. So this is an opportunity to really reflect on your district and school agenda and needs, to really push your thinking forward about what's possible. Envision a building that is going to be as flexible over the coming decades as possible. And be forward thinking, be aspirational. We know that compromises are going to need to get made along the way. So with that, I want to just, let's see. Now, I'm able to, I don't know if other people are able to see everybody else on their screen. If you go into that, that view, the grid view, you might want to see everybody on your screen for this, because I just want to do a quick kind of like check in with who we are as a team. And then we're going to get into these small groups to talk a little bit about our greatest hope. So teachers, can I have everybody who's a teacher wave their hand so we can see how many teachers we have? And we're trying to make this group as heterogeneous as possible, but we really value the input of our educators. We don't have any students with us tonight. Amy tried hard, and it turns out that it was very difficult for them to devote an evening to this. So they are doing their focus groups with Phil and his team at the school. Department heads, can I have any department heads raising their hands or waving? Okay. How about administrators? I guess people are going to fit into different categories, right? Administrators within the district. Community members. All right. SBC and school committee members. And we have a number of SBC members. And we already heard from the design team. Now, before we get into our small groups, I saw some hands up, but I think you guys were just waving, right? Okay, very good. So what I'd like to do now is we're going to put you in triads. So you'll be in a small breakout room for 6 minutes with a group of 2 other people. And if you could just share with them your name, your role, and your greatest hope for this project, whether it's your greatest hope educationally, your greatest hope around this building, your greatest hope about what this can mean for the community, your greatest hope about what this process would be like. All right. So we're going to just, you're going to have 6 minutes. There's 3 of you in each group, so 2 minutes each. I don't know if we're going to have an odd group that only has 2 people in it. Then you get a little extra time. And then we're going to come back in 6 minutes, and we're going to actually be able to then record through Mentimeter some of our thinking about our greatest hopes. Okay. So any questions about that before we jump into our triads?
So just David, it's Shane here. Just to remind folks, I think these breakout groups are limited to people who pre-registered. So if there is folks from the public who didn't pre-register, they won't go into one of these groups, and they won't be partaking in these small groups.
Okay. All right. So we'll see you back here in 6 minutes, and just try within your group to monitor, 2 minutes or so per person, so everybody gets a chance to speak. Okay. We'll see you back in 6 minutes. What's your greatest hope? Wayne, did you want to be in a room? You're on mute.
I'm on the permanent building committee.
Oh, okay.
Not so sure I need to be at this meeting tonight, but
All right. Well, we're happy to have you.
all right. I think there's another person might be in the building committee, but it was on the list, so I figured I'd tune in.
Yeah, I think we have a number of people on the SBC, on the school building committee. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a number of people that pre-registered. Wayne. That's why they've been allocated rooms, but it's also open to the public.
Mhm.
So yourself or anybody else is more than welcome.
Yeah,
I guess I'll just observe. I'm all set.
yeah. Well, you can tell us your hope for the process at least, or what maybe, your
Going
high
back-
level.
Going back to my previous experience, I was a building supervisor for North Reading Public Schools.
Yeah,
We built a new school in North Reading
yeah.
and probably took 10 years, but a lot of,
When was that, Wayne?
well, the school opened in 14 and 15.
Okay,
It was a 10-year project. And I guess back now it was 123 million. Now that's kind of inexpensive, I guess, but by
and we're
today,
looking at 350 million projects, 300 million.
it was like, $400 or $500 a square foot. Holy cow, that's a lot of money. I think, and I asked Shane to be on the HVAC, mechanical MEP committee as time goes on. It's a little early, I know, but, and I know, I just, part of my input would be, how are we going to heat and cool the school? I know this is really early, but
Yeah,
with the push for clean energy or cleaner energy, and
right.
our school in North Reading was totally natural gas and electric. It works. When I retired a year and a half ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And I'm just looking at kind of reading the tea leaves and the way things are going now in the state and the country. We're getting away from fossil fuels, and
Mhm.
how are we going to heat and cool this new school? Which is a major, major concern, sure.
Sure, yeah. So we're going to figure out those focus groups in the next couple of weeks, Wayne. I think certainly one of the early meetings would be that MEP and the sustainability group.
Yeah,
Probably early on, we'll just try and set sort of the sustainability goals and objectives. Is this going to be net zero, or are we going to be net zero already? I'm not sure that we'll get into the actual systems themselves. Whether it's full AC, partial AC, dehumidification, VRFs, I've seen it in schools until probably the new year. We may discuss them, but we certainly won't be choosing a system. We'll be looking at all the systems to see what works best. And that could depend on whether we go with a renovation addition or new school also. Could dictate.
I know it's early. I just think I guess the earlier we think about these things, the better off we'll be. When this school was built in North Reading, there was some estimates made as far as the cost for electricity and natural gas. The architect came up with some numbers, and
Yeah,
as time went on, they were fairly inaccurate. Because it just how often is this going to be? Is the school going to be heated? Is it heated 10 months a year and cooled 2 months a year? Is it cooled in May? Is it cooled in September and October? A lot of those things that I got involved in, and the equipment. I think it's probably a little early to be thinking about that, but because I read the paper and read the tea leaves, and I live in Wakefield, and there was a program that this town involved within other municipalities to build a peak usage unit in case in January they can't have enough electricity to keep people comfortable. And there was a big issue in the paper about, well, we don't want to do that because it's dirty fuel. We're going to run by natural gas. And I'm like, wait a minute, I heat my house with natural gas. And I think things are, as time goes on, almost I read the paper on a daily basis, becomes more and more of an issue. I have good friends in Salem. They're putting in gas lines to repair old gas lines, and are they going to continue to put the gas?
we're at this point where it seems like a lot of people are really trying to get very serious about net zero building.
Right. One of the issues we see with schools and high schools in particular is you're trying to feed a large number of kids, and the food managers, usually want gas in their kitchens, and then the science people want gas, right, for their experiments. So, it's one of the challenges we're going to have if we want to go fossil fuel. How do you, cooking all the food by electric, can certainly do that.
Just as another, and I understand that part because I was involved in it every day. The heating and cooling was called displacement ventilation, which
Right.
is pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
So in a classroom, there is no noise, there's no sound, there's no moving, all the motors are on the roof.
Right.
But they all use natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it's quite a process. When an architect, maybe Mr. Stephen would come up with a great architectural plan. Well, how are we going to keep people comfortable year round? And your schools are probably operational year round now. And I know it's a little premature, but just things I listen to and kind of be aware of, having been a facilities director for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to be quiet.
Well, I think we're going to be in this process establishing big picture goals around sustainability. And then the specifics of that is sort of down the road. But welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that glitch.
Right.
I'm going to share my screen again right now. And at this point, I'm going to ask you to go to open up another window on your laptop or computer. And also, you could use your smartphone for this as well. You want to go to www.menti.com, and you want to use the code 89179126, and you should come to this slide. And when you come to this slide, you will have the opportunity to submit your thoughts about your greatest hope. What you shared with your colleagues just now in your triad groups, or some portion of it. I think you have about 250 characters that you can share. So we'll be able to see them as they come up on the screen. And I also want to open up to anybody who would like to verbally share their greatest hope. It's always nice to hear people's voices as well, but we'll just take about 5 minutes for this now to just see what comes up on the screen as people share their greatest hope. Anyone having a problem getting to Menti? Okay. And throughout this process, as you're going to see, because we're about to do some more specific priority setting, you're going to have lots of opportunities to share your ideas for not just one, but many hopes. And we're going to see what are the bigger themes that arise. We're going to start every new workshop with a review of the notes and the highlights from the last workshop. Well, that's a nice one, a space where students don't want to leave and teachers, staff, and administrators feel rejuvenated, a place people want to be. I'll just open up for anyone to share. Tom?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm having a little trouble getting on here, but I can still go this route. Yeah. Basically, you want to know what we talked about in that group?
Well, just what your one hope that you have, what your greatest hope is.
Oh, my hope. Okay. My hope is that the building that I've been involved with, the studio, is WCAT for many years. And my thought would be that we could stay where we are at this point. Because if we had to move, the cost would be prohibitive to redo all the work that we've done in that station to stay up to the specs that are required today. So that's basically what I'm thinking of at this point.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Anyone else want to share a hope? Here's one for natural spaces with native plants and vegetable gardens, green roofs. And we can show you a bunch of examples of those in MSBA projects. And ecological spaces that complement the fire station. Okay.
And I didn't mean the fire station. Sorry, that was a typo.
Oh, okay.
It's
Well,
supposed to say like the like forest station that's around us.
the
We
forest
abut-
station.
We
Okay.
abut.
All right. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Diana. We'll make sure that it gets corrected on the notes. That's funny. Let's see. Improve the flow and layout of circulation between classrooms. One of the things you're going to see in a lot of the examples that we share is that we're trying to minimize hallways because so many schools are just miles and miles of hallways. They take up 30% of the square footage of the building. They're unusable except for cramming kids in. You know, we use them, but not in the most efficient ways. Maybe we'll send kids out to do work in the hallway. So we're going to be really looking at some examples of how to minimize circulation and also maximize use of hallways by making them wider in certain areas and furnishing them. Those are some of those extended learning areas that give you other options outside of the classroom. We can also think about really centrally locating shared amenities like your cafeteria, like your theater, like your library media space, and making those like a community hub for the school community, but also accessible after hours for the larger community. No one has an idea that they're passionate about sharing? Okay, Julie.
Hi there. I've taught in a number of districts and I've been involved in a number of building renovations and new building priorities. And I really would like to discuss safety because where I taught in the Masconomet regional area, we had a lot of glass and we had a glass hallway that after the situation in Newtown, Connecticut, we couldn't use the hallway. And I love the natural lighting. I'd like to hear how you incorporate safety with bringing in natural lighting, because it really, we probably lost a third of the usage of our school, especially because the open area, the glass areas were near drive-throughs for parents and anybody could drive through during the day. We actually ended up having a number of years with an awful lot of police presence during the day because of the design of the building. So I would like to hear that. And I would like to hear, after all the years I've taught, I was never surveyed as a teacher as far as what I needed for my space and for teaching and for my storage area and for my materials. I hope that there's a huge survey sent out because I could never believe that was never offered to me. And other than the kids in the building, you've got the teachers in the building for years and years and years as well. So I look forward to hearing about that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Julie. And that's definitely, Phil, you're meeting with teacher groups, right? To get and certainly we know that to make an agile classroom, we need good storage, especially if we're thinking about doing very kind of delivery in there. So if you're doing project-based learning of any sort or differentiated instruction, you're going to need space to store materials. So we're going to be thinking certainly about storage. And I think that, the safety and the transparency conversation is one that has a lot of different layers to it. Interestingly, the new school at Newtown is a lot of glass because once you get in, but you have to safely create safe gateways into the school, and then once you're in there, controlled amounts of transparency can help you be able to survey who's in the building and supervise students and build community and have a sense so it's not an anonymous thing. So we'll talk about that. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to move us along to talking about priorities now. And we have 3 different sets of priorities that we're going to look at. So, and we're going to try and separate them out, but there's going to be a lot of connections between them. So we have educational priorities, architectural priorities, and community priorities. And there's a page where you're going to be able to share any, you're not limited to one, you can share any number of priorities that you have. I wanted to first just say that when we met with the leadership team a few weeks ago from your school, we started talking about big picture priorities, and these are some of the things that came up as we look at the themes that came up. Certainly an inclusive school culture, universal design, easy wayfinding and navigation through the building, focus on social emotional learning and strategies that feel healthy for kids, and also feeling part of a healthy community, feeling known. Career education, college and career readiness, emphasis on art, music, and performance came up a lot, as did athletics. So those were just a couple of the educational priorities that came up, some of the themes. And now we're still on the Mentee page. So let's take about 5 minutes to give you an opportunity to share what your top educational priorities are. Now, as you share your priorities, you can be sharing ideas about space. Oftentimes that's what happens for people here, but we're interested in hearing about what your cutting edge is educationally, what you think is most important for students educationally, the kind of programs that you'd like to support in this building. Okay, and we will have it, and then the next one is going to be architectural priorities. And again, if anyone wants to verbally share, you're welcome to raise your hand and do that.
How do we get back to Mentee?
Mentee is Mentee. You go to the mentee.com.
Yeah, I was on it. I just can't get back to it.
Oh.
I guess I have to enter it again.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay. So I'm just gonna, again, people feel free to jump in. So a lot of mention of collaborative spaces here. We're definitely going to be thinking about how to make classrooms as collaborative as possible. And one of the ways that we do that is good modular furniture that and well-sized classrooms that allow you to rearrange as needed, but also those other more collaborative spaces for informal or formal kind of larger group or smaller group work. Inclusivity in terms of special education. Again, there is quite a lot of square footage that is devoted to special education within the MSBA template. And certainly some of those spaces are going to be private and we need them to be. Other spaces per order of DESE are going to be at least distributed throughout the school. They can be private in terms of being able to pull a blind down. But the idea is that students don't have to go to special education services or enrichment services at one end of the school. But again, that's going to be your conversation and in terms of what you need, the specifics of what you need. a developed STEM program that supports students in a variety of science and engineering opportunities. Now, one of the things, let's see, I also saw here growing more interdisciplinary opportunities for connected learning. So one of the themes that really comes up as we approach the design of a high school is that typically we have always departmentally organized our schools. And that is the way that schools are run. Some schools, more and more, are choosing to try and do more interdisciplinary delivery. And certainly all of the classrooms, except for the science classrooms and the specialty classrooms like a lab or a music area, should be interchangeable in terms of the same robust technology, same modular furniture. And so we can then start to think about more interdisciplinary co-location of classrooms if that is how your program develops. The bugaboo there are science classrooms. Science classrooms have more bells and whistles. Science teachers tend to share materials. So we need to group science classrooms together, but we can also try an approach where we group certain clusters of science classrooms and then maybe stack them on top of each other for efficiency of services, but co-locate them with other comprehensive educational classrooms near them. Because if you want to create a STEM or a STEAM kind of program, those adjacencies really are the things that allow you to do that in a more organic way. So we'll be talking to you about that. Engaging students in collaborative experiences. Now, I will say that in addition to all the collaboration space, we're looking at quiet spaces where students can focus. So we want that variety of spaces and spaces that adapt to different uses. Spaces for students with disabilities, STEAM spaces. Now, STEAM spaces might be specifically an engineering or a STEM or a STEAM lab or a maker space, or they could also be a collection of spaces like math classrooms near science classrooms, near humanities classrooms that create kind of a STEAM wing or set of adjacencies that allow you to create programs that cross those disciplines. So creating program around the maker movement, creating spaces for students that are free of unnecessary visual and auditory noise. Now, I will say that this is connected to the whole conversation, Julie, about glass and about distractibility, because there is that element, so we want to think about using transparency to get the best qualities, like the benefit of it for informal supervision or connectivity or maybe showcasing certain things. But it's also, it could be a visually distracting thing. So we need to be thinking about that. We also need to think about noise, certainly. Many of us have taught or lived in an open school environment, and we know that there's some nice connectivity there, but it's also very noisy and distracting. So we're going to try and get the best benefit of those connections, but have doors that close and blinds that close and the ability to have auditory and visual privacy whenever needed. Opportunity to celebrate the new warriors in the future building and support a building sense of community. So that has a lot to do with branding and identity, and a new building or a renovated building is always an opportunity to really work on that. Student support services suite. Distribution of administration's offices around the school, not in one specific area. That is one of the design patterns we'll look at, is that distributed services model, where you have adults that are in closer proximity to the students that they're working with. So we'll look at that and what that could mean. Technology that supports flexible, creative computer science programming. Great. Anyone wanna mention anything in particular that they're passionate about? Yes, Doug.
I think our science spaces are in desperate need of updating. And so I think with that will come STEAM and STEM spaces, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there are specific labs that might be a STEM or a maker lab. And then there's, science labs, the palette of science labs that are in the template. Now, one thing that is true about the MSBA template is, first of all, the science rooms are large. They're 1,440 square feet because they're 60 square feet per student, 24 students. So it's a nice large classroom. All of the services are perimeter services. There are no fixed, the MSBA will not fund any science classrooms with fixed lab stations because that is very inflexible. So the lab stations are around the perimeter, but there's good storage. There's areas for direct instruction or group instruction and areas for labs. So we'll talk about that, what those science labs can look like. Great. Spaces for clubs, to have offices or meeting spaces. One thing that I don't know if I saw here is opportunities for teachers to collaborate and for sort of professional workspaces. And I will tell you that the MSBA template has 75 square feet per teacher that is allotted to a professional office space. And that can be arranged in groups of, say, 4 teachers or 8 teachers or 12 teachers. It could be departmental, it could be interdepartmental. We'll be talking to you about that. But part of what that connects to is better utilization of classrooms. Other than science classrooms, if you're not setting up a lab, let's say, if you have a free period, the MSBA would like you to go to a professional workspace where you have, where you can work in a focused way, where you have storage, where you can collaborate with your colleagues, and where your classroom isn't going to sit empty for more than 15% of the day. That's part of also the reasoning behind that. All right, we're going to move on now to architectural priorities, and I'll share some of the ones that came up in our first meeting with your leadership. So innovation and flexibility, I think that's on everyone's mind. Making sure equal access and opportunities, being able to support more STEAM or inquiry-based programming, classrooms that are really agile and flexible, the issue of safety, but also not being like, feeling like a fortress, so safety and welcome at the same time, weaving a whole notion of health and wellness and ergonomic comfort into the building, making it that place that people want to be, and ease of circulation and wayfinding, being able to maybe create through color and material, fabric or material, different areas within the building that have distinct characters, so you know where you are. There's a sense of place, and it's easy to navigate through the building. Collaboration and gathering spaces, large and small. A library media center, which we look at as often the hub, intellectual hub of the school. Outdoor learning, ability for the community to use and access the building after hours in safe ways, sustainability, and connected to that, lighting quality. So those are some of the things that were initially prioritized, and we're gonna now let you share your top architectural priorities. And again, when we look at all the notes for this, we're gonna categorize them thematically, so we see all the big picture themes that come up, and then try and hit on those as we talk about the different options for design. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start talking about a few of these things. If anyone wants to chime in, please feel free, and of course, continue to add your ideas. So yeah, we're going to be looking at all elements of sustainability and sort of what level of sustainability to work towards. I don't see anything on this page that isn't something that we're going to do or we're going to be taking into account. These are all things that that are just part of creating a really thoughtful and future-oriented building for you. We're going to look at transparency and creativity and connectivity, again, in ways that are going to work for you. Certainly, we're thinking about easier circulation between classes and minimizing that hallway space. Tying in outside and indoor, and connections from science classrooms or from a makerspace to immediately to an outdoor area, something that we often do. And we can put a garage door, a glass garage door that completely opens a makerspace out to an outdoor platform for building, for instance. Plugs in the floors for laptops. Plugs can get in the floor, can get kind of tricky, but we're definitely going to be thinking about plugs, and you're going to see lots of examples of ceiling plugs that pull down, especially in things like maker spaces. But we're definitely going to be thinking about the need to plug in all the different devices that students and teachers have. Flexible seating options, movable walls that allow you to do interdisciplinary lessons. Now, definitely, we can show you examples of walls that they're relatively expensive. They can be, but they're good sound barriers when they're closed. And they could be whiteboards, they could be tackable surfaces. And they can definitely build in a lot of flexibility. Oftentimes, unless a school is really doing co-teaching, what we'll do is look at, say, in each cluster or neighborhood of classrooms, we might put one set with a movable wall in between. So that's something that we can talk to you about. Lots of light. We're definitely going to be focusing on that. Small breakout spaces, definitely within the template there. Looking at how we can fit in, not be too modern or futuristic looking. I'm sure that that SMMA is going to work with you on that one. Flexible and inspiring, appropriately sized space. Yeah. Rooms that are large enough to have breakout spaces within the same four walls. We're definitely thinking about classrooms as station-based, meaning you could have 4 or 5 different things going on at any one point in a classroom. So with modular furniture, you can rearrange them. Maybe there's a movable, not a movable wall, but maybe there's a visual screen or something too that we could have, a movable kind of whiteboard. Student-focused environments. Teaching can take place anywhere, anyhow. I mean, definitely one of the themes, and this is something that also connects to the idea of transparency and informal supervision, is that as we start to look at in the next section of this workshop, 21st century skills, a lot of them are higher order thinking skills that that we need to give kids practice to develop if we want to focus on that. And they have to learn to work a little bit more independently. And in order to do that, we need to give them a little bit more space to do that, either within the classroom or within some of these extended learning areas. So, so we're definitely be looking at how to promote that. Storage for performing, visual arts and clubs. Yeah. Yes, so schools age quickly, technology changes. We definitely want to build in resiliency and build in kind of a robust enough infrastructure that as new technology comes down the line, you're able to utilize that. And we're going to be thinking about that kind of future scenario planning. Whiteboard walls for sure. Passive and active safety, benches in hallways. Yep. Use of red lists, free materials. Yeah, a building that feels warm and not so institutional. We're going to be showing you lots of pictures of those type of buildings. Infrastructure that allows for projection of student work without relying solely on stationary forward-facing projectors. Okay. Space is important to students. I mean, one of the things that maybe connect to this idea too is are there areas of the school that are kind of like blank canvases that students and teachers can customize, if you will, through public art projects or you know, feeling a sense of ownership over a collection of classrooms or spaces in the building that really take on an identity. And I think that that's, you know, something that we've seen as really effective. Storage shelves, adequate storage and music. Yep. Storage. It, you know, there's never enough of it. And we're going to try and be really conscious of that. All right. This isn't our only chance to do this. We're going to be able to, you know, we'll have other opportunities to weigh in on this. We've got one more category here. And then actually this should read community priorities, not architectural. So we're going to talk about community priorities. And the ones that were highlighted in our initial meeting with your leadership was this idea of community use and access. And providing a venue for a wide range of community events and gatherings. We want that to be safe access, and we can think about parts of the school that can be completely locked off from the more public zones after hours or on weekends, if those zones are being used more like a community center or for community use. After school spaces, we want to be thinking about supporting before and after school programming, and that also relates a lot to the idea of storage. And then art, music, athletic spaces, we know those are really important to you and to the community. Improved drop off and pickup, and parking always comes up. So those were some of the things that for the community priorities. So as you think about your top community priorities for the program and the facility, you can share those. We're going to take about 5 minutes to do that. Then we're going to take a 15-minute break. And some communities actually, and we'll show you some examples of these, use some of these big ticket spaces like their cafe or their theater as community resources, and they could also be venue generating resources on the weekends, because some of these spaces are very nice spaces to hold events in for community groups or other groups that want to rent them. Clear wayfinding to community spaces for sure. An art gallery, yeah, we can definitely think about that. Curbside appeal and easily identified entrances. Yeah, it's always nice to know where to go. And by the way, one of the safety features that we want to build in too is really clear visibility into who is coming towards the building. We want to have one point of entry, one gatekeeping mechanism, and very good sort of visual control over that. State-of-the-art theater, music and performance space. I will say that the MSBA in their funding formula, because auditoriums are very expensive spaces that are often empty, they will fund an auditorium for up to 2/3 of the population of the school, not the full population of the school. So just to let you know that that's sort of how their funding formula works. I believe, and maybe Matt or Helen, if the community is willing to fund a larger auditorium, can they do that? Or is that still something that the MSBA will not allow? Phil, I see you.
Typically, likely not. I mean, everything with MSBA is a negotiation, but since it can't be sort of separated out, it's all just part of a single space.
Yeah,
it's difficult to put a value on it. So I think that's something that the MSBA might not consider,
Okay.
as opposed to an additional space that
Maybe a
for
black
some
box
other
space
reason
or-
that can be identified as clearly, a cost to it, so they don't participate.
Okay. All right, thanks. WCAT, could someone tell me what that is?
That's the Wakefield Community Access Television Station.
Okay, yeah. All right.
That's what I was talking about earlier tonight.
Oh, okay, Tom. So yeah, I know that at West Bridgewater Middle High School, they have housed their local cable access television program. Now, does WCAT run classes in the school?
The school has its own television station.
Yeah.
And as Doug would know, and they have, that's a program that's offered to students. And I think I look at it as a basic form of television. And they try to become proficient as the year goes out with some of the good programming they do. And then we're in the same building, WCAT, but we're on a different basis because we do a lot of broadcasting ourselves and outside events and so on. The high school does that too, but it's just a different level. And
Right. Because I know that was at West Bridgewater, that was a big part of the conversation, was that the MSBA would fund that if the cable access was actually offering classes during the day to students. So that'll just be part of the conversation.
But we could use more space. There's no question about it. I mean, if we're looking at things to look at, the building that we're in now, there is an empty area to the right of us, which would be very helpful if that was opened up. And again, the cost of that wouldn't be really expensive if we went the route that I had talked about.
Okay, thank you. I see here separate entrances for community events. That's definitely something that we will think about, whether it's the main entrance and then we can close off other parts of the school, or an actual entry to a community hub of spaces. Inviting campus, finding ways to deepen our inclusivity as a community and making our work more public to the community. Public access to outdoor spaces. Multiple theater spaces needed, large community demand. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And consciousness about the modes of transportation students and community members will use to get to school. Right. Okay, well, this is great. So we're gonna take a 15-minute break right now. Let me just stop sharing. So it is 7:43. So let's come back here at 7:58 and we'll get started. And I'm going to do a little bit of an overview about what some of the themes that come up for schools thinking about future ready skills, but then you're going to get into your small groups to talk about what that actually means for you and what you think are the most important 21st century skills or future ready skills for Wakefield students. Okay, so we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to be starting up in just a couple of minutes. I also wanted to point out that for those people that are on or listening, I thought we were going to have a chat function in this Zoom call, and I was going to put in the chat the handout for the activity that we're about to do. But since we don't have a chat function somehow, I've just emailed everybody in this group. If you were on the email list, then you should receive that handout. And if you didn't, then I would say put your email in the chat, but you can't do that. So you could just let me know, raise your hand, and we'll get your email and send it to you. There's a 2-page handout or 3-page handout that accompanies the activity that we're going to be doing. So I'm hoping that people can access that. And also, just before we get started, I want to make sure that all of our small group facilitators have been able to access the Google Docs folder that has the Learning Goals activity within it. and you should access when you get into your small groups, access the file that corresponds to the number that I gave each of you in the email that I sent. Whether there are 8 different groups, but I think we have 7 groups we're going to be getting into. So if anybody has a problem with that, just let me know. So again, for those people that are just getting on, and I'll say this one more time before we start the activity, the handout for the activity that we're going to be doing in about 15 minutes, I just emailed it to each of you because there is no chat function here. And we're going to see if next time we can make sure that we do have a chat function, which makes it easier to send these things out. All right, so we're going to get started again.
David?
Yes.
I'd just like to mention that that just like any profession, this one has its own language, so to speak, and that we have a glossary of terms that people can refer to. I believe it's been posted somewhere. Shane might be able to help us with that, but it's a glossary of terms on educational planning. So if we start talking about, flipped classrooms or blended learning or learning commons, and you're not quite sure what it is, you can, first of all, you can ask, but second of all, you can look it up. So
yes, thanks for pointing that out, Phil.
Yes, we'll be uploading all of this onto the project website in the next couple of days, all these handouts and how they're glossary of terms. So if you go to Wakefield, it's mhsproject.com, all the information will be available there.
Yeah. Amy, do you know, we created the Google Docs folder. Is that something that everyone in this group will have access to? Is that a place we could put all these files and notes?
I believe it could be. I'll have to check with Jeff. I saw the Google folder that he created, but I wasn't sure if that was for this, this
Okay,
group
so we'll
or
figure
a
out
different
how
group.
we'll figure out how to make all those accessible.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm going to pull up my screen again here, and I'm going to spend just about 12 minutes talking about future ready teaching and learning. And as Phil just mentioned, there's lots of terminology that people use talking about learning environments, and that's part of what this whole process is to create a common language that we all share about what those priorities are and how we want to refer to it. So same thing with future ready teaching and learning. There's lots of educational jargon and that connects to sort of ideas about this, but really what's most important is what it means to you all on the ground with working within the school and also as community participants here. What do you see as most important in terms of what we might call 21st century skills? Some people think, well, we're well into the 21st century, we should be calling it something different, and that's where other people have started referring to it as future ready skills. Simply, what are the skills that our students need to be able to really function and thrive in the world of work and post-secondary study? And so I'm going to just speak quickly about these just to kind of prime the pumps for our discussion. And then you're going to be getting into your small groups to talk about what you think those skills are that are most important. So when people talk about 21st century skills, there is a group called the Partnership for 21st Century Skills that coined these 4 C's, and now many people have added a 5th C of citizenship. So critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, and citizenship are all these higher order kind of skills or abilities or maybe confidences that students develop that pertain to their ability to be kind of good collaborators and communicators and team players and citizens. So the 6 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then in the 90s, we were talking a lot about rigor, relevance, and relationship, are every bit as important as they've always been. And mastery of core academic subject areas is also very important. That's sort of the foundation for everything. But along with that is this recognition that these skills are increasingly important. And the idea of head in hand, project-based learning or career tech or internships, things like that, that's nothing new. It's been around for a long time, but it's become increasingly sort of a subject of interest in schools, because the only way that kids can really learn these 4 or 5 C's is by practicing applying the content that they're learning to things that feel authentic to them. Another big bucket is around social emotional learning. And we know that it's very important, increasingly important within our schools, to help create ways to meet kids where they're at and help them feel safe and part of a community. And so that social emotional learning component is something that a lot of schools are thinking about. Other language that comes up is, more student-centered and interdisciplinary approaches. Technology should be where you need it, when you need it. We want to be fully inclusive and differentiated. That means universal design approach, varied methodologies for working with students and helping them to find their strengths and interact with curriculum in different ways. Many schools are thinking about how to connect what they do to the larger community. That's part of that authenticity piece. Connects to the idea of problem and project-based learning, STEM and STEAM, kind of a meta discipline. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And this implies that in addition to traditional delivery, we're also looking at more problem-based delivery that implies that there are products and processes that kids are going through. So connected also to this conversation, big picture theme is the idea of academic growth mindset, really sort of working in a very conscious way with students, emphasizing the value of effort over just innate intelligence. It's not just that you're good at something to begin with, but you persevere, you in the face of setbacks, and you develop that kind of like work ethic around working hard at things that you want to get better at. I talked about social emotional learning as connected to developing self-awareness, responsible decision-making, working on relationship skills, and developing that kind of more mindfulness. And many schools are thinking about curricula that actually address that, or may have advisory groups that address that. The idea of universal design for learning thinks about varying delivery methods, so making some of them more hands-on, giving kids the ability to represent and express what they know in different ways and to engage with curriculum in different ways. Another kind of way of thinking about this is that we have lots of neurodiverse learners. Everybody has their own sort of learning styles, and we need to accommodate those. So in general, educational delivery is moving from a more teacher-centric to ways to become more student-centric and active. We're looking at learning environments as being flexible. Technology is at least one-to-one, if not more, and there's more of it coming down the road, I'm sure. Collaborative learning environments and also project-based opportunities. And when we think about student-centered and lifelong learning, and that's often a skill that schools talk about wanting to help their students develop, it's really about developing a sense of agency and kind of more confidence in your own ability to be a proactive learner. And that really, for the teachers in the group, connects to the upper reaches of Bloom's taxonomy, which is that, the knowledge and the content is the base and the understanding, but it's really what you do with it to create, to evaluate, to analyze, that is where a lot of the interesting stuff happens. This guy, Tony Wagner, in addition to the 4 C's, talked about agility and adaptability as something that's really what employers are looking for. He interviewed businesses around the country, and what they were looking for in their entry-level workers and their younger workers was agility and adaptability and confidence, the ability to learn and unlearn things. So these aren't just nice ideas. This is really connected to workforce development, the Future of Jobs Report, World Economic Forum. Their top 10 skills of 2025 are all some version of these 4 or 5 C's and that kind of adaptability. So it's really imperative for us to think about ways to help our kids to practice and develop some of these skills. So when we met with your leadership a few weeks ago, we talked to them about what are the things that are most important to them at Wakefield High School. And we met with your leadership and a group of teachers and created this list of your top, from in terms of priorities, the things that were most kind of top of mind for you. And I'm going to go through the first 10 or 12 of those right now. And just again, to prime the pumps for this conversation that we're about to have. So right up at the top was the idea of career and college pathways and being able to help students develop broad-based transferable skills to connect what they're doing to ideas about careers, about post-secondary work and education, and things like service learning and internships. Real-world learning, the idea of leveraging community resources and adult world connections and mentoring opportunities for students, making the walls of the school in a sense permeable so that the kids are going out into the community is coming into the school, obviously in safe ways. Differentiating instruction. Again, these are the priorities that were created in our first meeting. Targeted intervention, making sure that equitable access was something that was on top of people's minds. Student voice and choice and giving kids the opportunity to work in more self-paced ways. STEM and STEAM, we know you have some great equipment and are looking for some spaces to really help and programming to really support that. So STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math is really kind of like a meta discipline where all these disciplines are represented, as are the design thinking process, kind of the engineering design. And many schools are combining that with art and humanities. So the A in STEAM also implies that there is a focus on humanities, reflecting on or using reading and writing across the curriculum to do projects that relate to STEM. Excuse me. Project-based learning, deeper learning, opportunities to go deep, looking at also performance-based assessment. If students are creating products that relate to these authentic contexts, then you're not just going to be giving them summative like exams, but you're giving them formative assessments and checking in with them as they learn all the different stages of problem solving. Mastery of core academics, definitely important. And when we think about Mass State standards, a lot of the 4 Cs are actually very much embedded now within these state standards, looking at reading and writing across the curriculum, applying core sort of mathematical concepts to actual authentic problems. And again, there's an emphasis on learning the skills, but also putting them into practice. So I just shared 6 of those. I'm going to share 6 more. I'm going to open up for menti.com. If you go to this page now, I'm just curious for those people that are connected most closely to the school or in the community, which of these different future-ready programming elements are you most excited about and why? So you should be able to get to this page in menti.com if you type in these numbers. I'm going to leave this list up here, but then we can toggle over and see sort of what people are thinking. So I'll leave it up here for a minute or two so that you can share with us what you're most interested in, and you can also share with us why you're particularly interested in that. Okay, I'm just going to toggle over here and see what people are thinking. A lot of emphasis on real world learning and STEAM. And this is also, by the way, highly motivating for students. When you talk to folks about what their most meaningful learning experiences, if you think back to your own experience in high school, what the most meaningful learning that happened for you was, it's often related to something that was more problem-based, where you did something that somehow was really meaningful for you. It helped you develop a passion. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I want to give us time in our groups. So I have 6 more other of your top 12 sort of elements that we discussed in our first meeting. Visual and performing arts, obviously very, very important to the school, and offering opportunities for creative expression, arts integration. Many people refer to this as a more whole child approach. Blended and individualized learning. We kind of learned a lot about this in the last year and a half, that we had to go into more virtual methodologies, and actually some kids and some teachers really thrive on that. It connects again to different learning styles, but certainly opportunities for thinking about online kind of flipped classrooms, or where you see the lecture online and then you come into class and talk about the content instead of getting a lecture in class, or more opportunities for self-paced work. And many schools actually offer certain electives if they don't teach particular languages. That's an example of where they might use a virtual methodology for students to be able to choose a virtual course. Professional learning communities, looking at opportunities for co-teaching or team teaching, cross-discipline instruction and development of material. And opportunities for teacher and student collaboration. That has a lot of implications for sort of the design of the school as well. Next gen science standards. These are things, you look at them and they're all action verbs. They're all a big emphasis here on problem-based learning, obviously, and how you apply the concepts you're learning to do a lot of different things with them using scientific methodology. And then the idea of anywhere, anytime learning, which connects also to blended learning, but that there may be an outdoor classroom, or maybe kids are learning under the stairwell because they've got their, if they're focused, and if they're working in self-paced ways, or if they're working in small groups, then the idea is that learning can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the school as well. It can happen after school, it can happen in the summer, it can happen at home. And health and wellness as an overarching theme in terms of mental and emotional health, social health, nutrition, physical health. Also, this connects to the idea of biophilia, bringing green into the building and light. So again, I'm going to just open up for which of these elements are most exciting to you and why. Okay. A lot of emphasis on visual and performing arts, for sure. Yeah. Anywhere, anytime learning, blended, yeah. Great. So as we think about elements of the design of the building, we're going to want to refer back to these priorities and things we know are important to us. All right. I'm going to now get us into this Future Ready Learning Goals activity. Now, as I mentioned, but maybe people didn't hear me, because we don't have a chat function on this call, I emailed each of you the list of the handouts for this. And what essentially it is, it's a 3-page handout that has sort of some of the elements that Wakefield Memorial High School is thinking about. I took that from your handbook. And then it has 2 pages of these different takes on skills for the 21st century. We've got the 4 C's right here, looking at Bloom's taxonomy. There are different examples that you're going to see. There's lots of overlap. Your assignment in your small groups is going to be for you to individually review these learning goals, share with your group the things you think are most important, and then create a collective learning goals list of your top 6 to 10 learning goals. And you can think about this as if there were a poster in every WMHS classroom, what would you want it to say? If you were going to communicate to kids what you thought it was important for them to be able to do or know. So that's your task. And again, the reason why we're doing this is because we want to, before we get into a conversation about space, we want to make sure we have a thorough understanding and a forward-thinking understanding of what you value educationally within your school community. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And is there anyone that didn't get the email with that, with the handout? I'm hoping you all got it. Okay, Tom. I'm gonna need, if you just stay on after we get into our small groups, I'll get your email from you. I'll email it to you. You can get into a small group.
David, I'll email it to Tom.
Okay, fantastic. Okay.
Anybody else?
And all of our facilitators.
Shane, can you send it to me as well?
To John Chines, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So it's 8:21 now. We'll come back just around 5 minutes before 9. So we'll have 35 minutes to do that. We're running about 5 minutes late. But see what you can come up with. This is really much more about process and sort of really having an opportunity to share with each other and think together about what's most important. So I'll be coming and visiting each of your different groups. You're going to have a facilitator within your group who will share their screen with you. And as you have a conversation, start to take notes so that you can collectively create this poster for your classroom. Okay? Any questions about it before we jump in?
Yeah, I think Stephen Engels, did you have your hand raised?
I did.
So you need a handout, Stephen?
I do.
Okay,
great.
I've got Stephen's email too.
All right. So Shane, you're going to email those to everybody?
Yep.
All right. So we'll see you in 35 minutes.
Hey, Shane, can you also send it to Ben Williams, please?
Yeah, what's your email, Ben? I'm not sure I have yours.
bwilliams@smma.com.
Oh, no, that Ben. Okay, sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So before we start, Joanne and Will, I don't know where you said we'll see you upstairs. Where, who do you represent, or where are you coming from?
I'm the grades 5 through 12 science curriculum coordinator. So I'm at both the middle school and the high school.
Oh, great. Okay. And Will?
I'm in the basement in the English department.
Oh, okay.
Level 1, Will. Level
right. 1. Okay, welcome back, everybody.
Level 1 and windowless.
Welcome back, everybody. I got to visit a lot of your, all of your groups. Sorry about the inability to share screens. We'll make sure that that doesn't happen next time. Before we go, I want to do 2 things. One, I want to take a group shot right here of the group. If everybody could smile so we're not all looking in different directions, right? So cheese. All right, excellent. And now I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to do one more thing on Mentimeter before we leave. We don't have time to kind of hear from everybody about sort of what your discussions were. I know there were some great discussions. I'm going to look forward to getting the lists from each of the facilitators. What I'm going to do is then look at how they all kind of connect together. I have a scoring kind of chart, and I'm going to come up with a consolidated list when next we meet. And you'll be able to see sort of where that comes out. And Amy pointed out that this is really kind of something that is very aligned with the work that you're doing for NEASC now, and that really connects to your conversation about Portrait of a Graduate. So it'll be a useful tool to at least as a starting point. And on that note, what I'd like you to do is, we've got this slide here, and you can enter up to 6 learning goals. You don't have to do any of the learning goals that are on this sheet here, although this is a word map or a word cloud. So if you use, first of all, enter each learning goal, your top 6 learning goals based on the discussion that you had and the thinking that you've been doing. You can add things that aren't here. If you are going to use things that are on this list, then try and use the same language, because as these word clouds work, the more times we get the exact same word, it's going to be bigger and bigger. So it's always interesting to see how it maps out. So so you should be able to enter 6 separately, submit 6 different learning goals that are most important to you. And again, feel free to make up your own, add your own if they're not here. Okay, I'm going to toggle over so we can, but feel free to keep adding. It is 9 o'clock, and I want to let people know that you're free to leave. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. Sorry about some of the technology glitches. We're going to make sure they don't happen next time. For the next workshop, we will very likely be sending you a different link for a Zoom meeting. So please look out for that. And have a great week. We'll see you at the next workshop is next Tuesday night. So we'll see you then.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Night, everybody.